So, what do you think jazz, pop music, and yeah, even your piano lessons all have in common? It's kind of a weird question, right? Well, the answer is a composer who lived over 300 years ago. Seriously, let's dive in and see how that's even possible. Yep, we are talking about the one and only Johann Sebastian Bach. And trust me, this isn't going to be some boring history lesson about old, dusty music. His story is all about incredible dedication, mind-blowing genius, and a legacy that is, no joke, still shaping the songs you listen to right now.
All right, let's go all the way back to the beginning. See, Bach didn't just come from a musical family. He was born into a full-blown musical dynasty.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1685 in Eisenach, Germany. And for Bach, music wasn't just a hobby. It was everything. I mean, the name Bach in his town pretty much just meant musician. So yeah, he was surrounded by it from the second he was born.
But, his childhood, it wasn't easy. It actually took a really tragic turn. By the time he was just 10, he'd lost both of his parents. I mean, can you imagine? He ended up moving in with his older brother, Johann Christoph, who happened to be a professional organist. So while it was obviously a super tough time, it also put him face to face with the very instrument that would make him famous. And this kid was just obsessed with learning. There's this amazing story that he used to sneak downstairs in the middle of the night by candlelight to copy huge books of music by hand. Why? Just so he could figure out the secrets of the great composers. I mean, that's a whole other level of dedication, right? So, of course, all that hard work totally paid off. As a young guy, Bach started getting famous. And not just for the music he wrote, but for how he played it. He was a total virtuoso. You could basically call him the original rock star of the organ. And if you want to understand just how committed he was, get this. We complain about traffic getting to a concert, right? Well, Bach once walked over 400 kilometers. That's like walking from Munich all the way to Berlin, just to hear another famous organist play. Unbelievable. Naturally, that kind of talent gets you noticed. He started climbing the career ladder fast. He'd move from one city to the next, always landing a bigger, better gig. He went from being a church organist to a court musician for a duke, and then, get this, the director of music for a prince. It was really during his time in a town called Weimar that his reputation just exploded. Word started spreading all over Europe about this incredible organ player who was doing things with the instrument that people didn't even think were possible. But believe it or not, his biggest and most challenging job was still ahead of him. When he got to Leipzig, he wasn't just a musician anymore. He was pretty much the music manager for the entire city. No pressure, right? So, in 1723, he lands this huge job, director of music for the 4 main churches in Leipzig. And this was a massive responsibility. We're talking composing, rehearsing, and performing new music for church services every single week. Oh, and on top of all that, he also had to teach Latin and music to students at the local school. The guy was busy. Yeah, and a huge part of that job was writing something called a cantata every week. So what on earth is a cantata? Well, the easiest way to think about it is like a 20 or 30-minute musical episode. It had a choir, it had instruments, and it told a little story that went along with the theme of that Sunday's church service. So how many of these little musical episodes do you think he cranked out? Any guesses? Well, we know that over 200 of them have survived to this day. Just think about that. That is a staggering amount of creative work, week after week, for years on end. Okay, so let's get into the music itself. Because beyond all those cantatas, Bach wrote some of the most iconic pieces in all of history. These are his greatest hits, and you can still hear them being played constantly today. For instruments, he composed these absolute masterpieces. You've got the super energetic Brandenburg concertos, which feature all kinds of different solo instruments. And then there are the legendary cello suites and the sonatas for solo violin. I mean, these pieces are so complex and so beautiful that even today, they are the ultimate test for any serious musician. And when it came to the keyboard, he was on another level, a true genius. He wrote a collection called The Well-Tempered Clavier, which is basically the ultimate musical workout for a pianist. There's a piece in every single major and minor key. And then you have the Goldberg variations, where he takes this one simple little melody and just reinvents it 30 different incredible ways. So what was his secret sauce? His special power? It was a technique called counterpoint. And it's actually a really cool idea. It's the art of weaving multiple, totally separate melodies together at the exact same time. Like, imagine three people all singing completely different songs, but somehow they all fit together perfectly and sound amazing. That's the magic of counterpoint.
And he absolutely perfected this technique in a type of music called a fugue. Here's how it works. It starts with just one single melody. Then another voice or instrument comes in, copying that same melody. And then more and more voices join the party, and suddenly you have this intricate, amazing musical conversation happening. It's so cool because it's both perfectly mathematical and just packed with emotion. But Bach's story doesn't just end with him being super famous and successful. The final chapter of his life was actually full of struggle. And believe it or not, his music, his entire legacy, almost vanished forever. See, towards the end of his life, Bach's eyesight started to fail him. He actually had 2 different eye surgeries, but they both went badly, and he ended up completely blind. But even then, he didn't stop. He kept on composing, just dictating the music that was in his head out loud so his family could write it down for him. And after he died in 1750, you'll never believe this, but his music was actually seen as old-fashioned. It was pretty much forgotten for almost 80 years. But then, in 1829, another big-shot composer, Felix Mendelssohn, put on this huge performance of one of Bach's masterpieces. And that one concert sparked a massive comeback. Ever since that day, Bach has been rightfully recognized as one of the greatest musical geniuses who ever lived. So let's bring it back to that first question. Why does this guy from 300 years ago still matter? Well, it's because the rules of harmony that he basically perfected are the foundation for almost all the music we listen to in the Western world. Every single music student studies his work, and his ideas on how melody and harmony work together have influenced tons of jazz, pop, and even rock musicians, a lot of times without them even knowing it. You know, Bach himself had a really beautiful way of putting it. He once said that in his music, the eternal harmony is in dialogue with itself. What a cool way to think about it, right? He saw music as this perfect, logical, beautiful conversation, and he basically invited all of us to listen in. And that really leaves us with one final thought. Bach created something so powerful, so timeless, that here we are, still talking about him 3 centuries later. So it makes you wonder, who is the Bach of our time? Which musician playing today do you think people will still be calling a genius 300 years from now?